All right, today we're diving into a source that's talking about this massive global tension that's been brewing. And you might think, okay, what does that have to do with me? Well, as we're about to find out, it could hit your wallet and hard.
Yeah, the source we're looking at, it doesn't mess around. It kicks things off with this one line, and it really sets the tone. It's basically saying the stakes couldn't be higher.
So how does some big, faraway problem actually hit home for you? Well, the source says it all starts with something you see, every week. The very first place you'll feel the pinch? The gas pump.
But oh, it doesn't stop there. Not even close. I mean, think about it for a second. Everything you buy, right? It has to get to the store somehow. On a truck, a ship, whatever. So when fuel costs go through the roof, guess what happens next? Yep, that cost gets passed on to you at the grocery store. And finally, that same ripple effect could hit you right where you live. Your electricity bill, your heating, it could all start to climb. The source makes it crystal clear. A conflict happening on the other side of the world could literally change your financial reality, practically overnight. Okay, so what's actually causing this potential financial storm? To get to the bottom of it, the source we're examining tells us we have to look at the growing tension between the United States and Iran.
And this really paints a picture of just how tense things are. On the one hand, the source points to some serious military posturing and, a total breakdown of trust. And then, on the other hand, yeah, they're talking about peace, but the analysis is pretty blunt. It's not working. They're just stuck.
But here's the kicker. According to the source, this isn't just some political squabble or military standoff. No. At its heart, this is all about one thing: control. Control of oil, control of trade, and yeah, ultimately, control of the entire global economy. And believe it or not, this whole massive global power struggle, it all comes down to one single tiny spot on the map. And that place is the Strait of Hormuz. Just look at it. It's this super narrow strip of water. You can think of it like a bottleneck, or a single highway that connects the huge oil fields in the Persian Gulf to, well, the rest of the world.
And this number, wow, it just shows you how important this little strait is. 30%. Let that sink in for a second. Nearly a third of all the oil that travels by sea has to squeeze through this one tiny passage. It's basically one of the most important economic arteries on the entire planet.
So what happens if that artery gets clogged? Now we're going to look at the chain reaction, the domino effect that our source says would happen, and see exactly how a blockade over there becomes a big problem for you right here.
The source breaks it down into 5 pretty simple and pretty scary steps. First, the strait gets blocked. The tap is turned off. Instantly, oil prices don't just rise, they skyrocket. Then, because fuel is in everything, the cost to transport anything goes through the roof. And of course, that extra cost gets passed directly to you. Prices for everything start to climb. And that, my friends, is how a global shock gets started. And look, this isn't just some what-if scenario. The source is pointing out that we might already be seeing the early warning signs. The markets are getting jittery. Prices for things are bouncing all over the place. There's just this growing feeling of uncertainty in the air. So, all of this brings us to a major crossroads. The source really frames this as the world facing a choice, a fork in the road with 2 very, very different paths ahead. Okay, path number 1 is the path of peace. Everybody steps back, they make a deal, and things calm down. Prices stabilize, markets breathe a sigh of relief. But path number 2? Well, that's the path of escalation. And that leads to a global economic shock. We're talking oil shortages, stock markets crashing, and inflation just everywhere. So, if the worst happens, who actually pays the price? It's not the big governments or the giant corporations. No, the source lands on this really powerful point, reminding us that at the end of the day, it's the average person who gets stuck with the bill. And so we're left with the big final question from our source material. Which path are we actually on right now? Are we heading for peace, or are we walking straight into a global crisis? Because the answer it suggests could decide the future of your finances.